The night was alive with chaos, a storm lashing the forest road as if the sky itself was trying to wipe away the world. Rain pounded hard against the asphalt, hammering the sound of fear into her chest. Puddles shimmered in the dim, flickering light of a dying street lamp, reflecting the jagged chaos of a mangled car. Smoke curled from the twisted metal, like ghostly fingers reaching into the storm. And somewhere, far off, a wolf howled, a sharp, aching sound that cut through the wind. Her heart jumped, every beat hammering against her ribs, each breath shallow and ragged, her lungs burning with panic and exhaustion. She stumbled forward, her arm pressed tightly against the wound that was already slick with rain and blood. Her dress clung to her in strips, sodden and torn, her hair plastered to her pale, trembling face. Or each step was uncertain. The mud tugged at her shoes, sucking her down, forcing her to wobble, forcing her to fight to stay upright. Every nerve screamed danger, but she couldn't stop. She wouldn't. Not tonight. The howl came again, closer now. Or maybe it was only in her mind. Her vision sparkled at the edges, tiny silver sparks flickering like embers crawling across her skin. Something dangerous was inside her. Something she didn't fully understand, something she had tried to hide, tried to control. Until now. Her lips barely whispered against the wind, almost a prayer, almost a promise. I won't die like this. Her mind flashed, a memory that cut like ice. A voice, cruel and familiar, whispering from years past. You don't belong. You never did. Every word settled heavy on her chest, mixing with the terror of the storm and the fear that she might never see another dawn. Yet despite it all, her pulse throbbed with a stubborn spark of life, a pulse of maternal instinct, self-preservation, and raw, trembling courage. She wouldn't give in. She refused. Somewhere in the darkness, she felt the forest watching, sensing the silver fire simmering beneath her skin. She didn't know what would happen next, didn't know if she could survive what was coming, but one thing was certain. She had to keep moving. She had to. And to you, listening in the quiet hum of the storm, she would almost whisper directly, almost reach through the veil of this story. If you love intense rejected Omega stories, fated mates, and the kind of fire that refuses to be tamed, subscribe to Moonlight Mate's Story, and let this journey ignite you. Every heartbeat, every soaked step, every flicker of silver in the dark promised only one thing. Her story was just beginning, and it was going to burn. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the rain now falling in a relentless sheet that hammered against leaves and mud alike. Shadows twisted unnaturally among the trees, and she froze, heart hammering, muscles tensing. Something moved, a darkness darker than the night itself, slipping silently through the underbrush. She thought she imagined it at first, a trick of the storm, until the ground vibrated beneath her feet, low and certain. Then he appeared. A massive shape, larger than any wolf she had ever seen, yet human in his stance, his fur dark as midnight but glinting under the moonlight that broke briefly through the storm clouds. Golden eyes, a sharp and commanding, fixed on her, and even before he spoke, the world seemed to shift. Wolves that had been howling in the distance recoiled, tails down, ears flattened, instinct bowing to a presence far older, far stronger than the night itself. The wind stilled around him, carrying the scent of power, danger, and something disturbingly familiar. Something that spoke to a part of her soul she hadn't dared to touch in years. And then he spoke her name. Soft, low, almost intimate, almost a command. Ilara. The syllable rolled over her like heat, yet steadied the fire racing under her skin. Sparks that had danced in her vision, the flickers of uncontrollable power, suddenly faded, crawling back into hiding as if the very air acknowledged him as master. And she, in some strange way, I trusted him despite the storm of fear still gripping her heart. Before she could react, before her instincts could scream at her to run, he closed the distance and lifted her effortlessly. Her breath caught in her throat, shock and disbelief battling with the subtle, undeniable pull toward him. His hands were firm, careful, and she felt the strength in his fingers, the scars along his knuckles hinting at a history of fights, fought and endured. There was a heaviness in his gaze, a warning and a promise all at once. Fear began to warp, twisting into something new. Intrigue, a dangerous attraction that she didn't want but couldn't ignore. Every heartbeat in her chest matched the silent rhythm of his, a connection that felt predestined, yet terrifying. He didn't smile. He didn't speak again. He simply held her, steady and unyielding. And for the first time since the crash, since the wolves' howls and the blood on her arm, she felt a strange, fragile sense of safety. Not comfort, not love yet, but a promise that perhaps, just perhaps, she wasn't entirely alone in this world. And the storm continued around them, relentless and unforgiving. But for the first time she realized, whatever this alpha was, he wasn't here to destroy her. He was here to challenge her, to see her, to ignite something in her that even she had been too afraid to touch. Alara's mind swirled as the storm around them raged on, but it wasn't the rain or wind that pressed against her. It was the weight of a lifetime of whispers, shadows, and exile. Memories clawed at her mind, relentless, as if the forest itself wanted her to remember who she had been, who she was told she would always be. As a child, the pack had watched her like she was a fragile thing teetering on the edge of destruction. Mothers muttered, fathers turned away. Dangerous. Best be hidden, they had whispered, voices laced with fear, a tremor of prophecy she hadn't yet understood. She had learned early that love was a stranger, that trust was a weapon she could not wield without being struck down. Her body, even now, reminded her that she was not ordinary. Flickers of silver fire danced under her skin. Tiny sparks, uncontrolled, teasing at the edges of her consciousness. She clenched her fists, willing them to retreat, but the pulse of power persisted. It had always been this way, a constant reminder of the curse she carried, a strength that could heal or destroy, and a destiny that demanded she hide it, or be torn apart. And yet, there was him, the alpha who had appeared as if summoned by some unspoken bond, golden eyes steady on her, unafraid of the danger he must sense in her. Fear, yes, but also something else. Recognition. Respect. He had seen the cracks in her armor, the trembling edges of her courage, and instead of recoiling, he had stayed. Even now, when the sparks under her skin threatened to betray her, she felt that invisible thread. He saw not weakness, but strength nestled inside her brokenness. Her chest tightened with a mixture of longing and shame. How could she allow herself to trust, to hope, when betrayal had been the air she breathed for years? And yet, she felt a flicker of possibility. Hope that perhaps, for the first time, someone could witness the whole of her and not turn away. Loneliness twisted into aching desire. Saw guilt wove its sharp edges into her heartbeat. And yet beneath it all, there was a spark, a fragile promise, that she might finally be seen, finally matter, finally be more than the cursed Omega she had always been told she was. The forest whispered around her, wind and rain mingling with memory, and she realized, with a jolt that made her pulse skip, that survival had never been enough. Not anymore. If she could survive this, perhaps she could rise. Perhaps she could embrace the fire she had feared. And maybe, just maybe, the one who saw her fully, the one who had lifted her from the mud and rain, was the key to a redemption she had never dared imagine. The forest opened before her like a secret held for centuries, frost-laden branches arching overhead, moonlight spilling silver across moss and stone. The air was thick with anticipation, the scent of pine and earth mingling with something older, something alive, watching. Ancient runes carved deep into stones pulsed faintly, humming with a rhythm she felt in her chest, a heartbeat not her own. Her steps faltered, mud and frost clinging to her trembling feet, but the pull forward was irresistible, magnetic, as if the grove itself whispered her name. The alpha moved beside her, silent, a shadow among shadows, yet his presence radiated a power that made the air bend around him. Golden eyes followed her, awe and tension warring in their depths. He did not speak, and she did not need him to. Even the wolves at the edge of the clearing crouched, submissive, sensing the shift in the world around her. Her pulse thrummed in sync with the pulsing runes, every nerve alight with anticipation, fear, and something like destiny. And then the words came, carried on the wind, echoing from voices she hadn't heard in years, voices older than memory. The one with the mark, child of the flame. Her stomach tightened and a shiver ran down her spine as the prophecy sank into her bones. She blinked, and the grove blurred, fading into a vision. In the bowed in silent reverence, faces awed, bowed in silent reverence, faces awed, tails low. The child reached toward her, tiny hands glowing, and she felt it. The weight of what she carried, the life inside her, no longer merely fragile but a fulcrum of fate, power, and responsibility. Her breath caught. Fear mingled with awe, and self-doubt gnawed at the edges of her courage. And could she carry this destiny? Could she survive the judgment that had already marked her as cursed? And yet, deep inside, something fierce and undeniable stirred. The realization that she could not run, could not hide. This child, this power, this fire inside her, demanded she rise. That the world, chaotic and cruel as it was, could be bent by her hands if she embraced what she was meant to become. The Alpha's gaze met hers then, steady, reverent, almost fearful. In that silent communion, she sensed he understood. This was more than prophecy. This was a reckoning. And she, trembling, heart-pounding, and fire under her skin, knew that she would face it, not as the girl they had shunned, but as the force she had always been meant to become. The forest seemed to exhale with her, wind whispering secrets in her hair, the runes glimmering brighter, daring her to step forward and claim her fate. The grove, sacred and still, moments ago, shattered under the roar of voices and the thunder of paws striking earth. Rival alphas emerged from the shadows, their eyes blazing with fear and contempt, jaws tight, bodies coiled like drawn steel. "Forbidden pregnancy," one bellowed, voice cracking through the frost-laden air. Another hissed, "Omega corruption, she'll destroy us all." Words like knives slashed at her, burning through the fragile cocoon of awe she had clung to moments before. The air thickened, frost sparkling against the chaos of uprooted leaves, and she felt the weight of countless eyes upon her. Wolves, alphas, ancient spirits of the forest herself could almost hear whispering and warning. The alpha beside her stiffened, golden eyes narrowing, a jaw tight. His stance radiated command and hesitation all at once, torn between defending her, this girl they called cursed, and obeying the rigid rules of his pack. She felt it, sensed it in the taut lines of his shoulders, the way his fingers twitched near hers, restrained, conflicted. Fear pressed against her ribs, yet beneath it, a deeper fire throbbed, the silver flame she had tried to contain. Then it erupted. A flash under her skin, a surge she could no longer restrain. Silver sparks flared across her body, leaping into the air, lighting the grove like liquid lightning. The forest floor cracked beneath her feet, frost splintering into shards that danced with the heat of her power. Wolves recoiled instinctively, hackles raised, hearts pounding as she trembled, arms trembling, tears streaking her rain-matted face. Or it was both terrifying and intoxicating, power, raw and unrefined, seeking release. Her vision blurred, rage and fear mingling with a clarity she had never known. She could feel the pulse of the forest in her veins, her unborn child thrumming like a heartbeat in sync with hers, a promise that she was not merely surviving, she was awakening. The rival pack faltered at the intensity, voices trembling now as her presence filled the grove like a storm incarnate. And then, almost as suddenly as it had begun, the words fell. Exile. The pack's command cut through the echoing roar of the forest, cold, final, and merciless. She straightened, shoulders squared, chin lifted. Heart pounding with betrayal and determination, she did not look back. She would walk from the grove if they demanded it, yes, but she walked with fire beneath her skin, with the knowledge that her strength, her courage, her love would protect the alpha who had dared to stand by her, and the child growing inside her. Anger simmered in her chest, heartbreak clawed at her soul, yet beneath it all, a fierce moral resolve took root. The world might fight her, might reject her, might call her cursed, but she would not falter. She was no longer the frightened Omega who ran from shadows. She was a force, rising, unstoppable, luminous in silver fire, and she carried destiny in her very blood. The cave was small, hidden beneath a crag of jagged rocks, its mouth opening to the silver wash of moonlight outside. Inside, the firelight painted flickering shadows along the rough walls, warm against the cold that clung to her soaked clothing, soaked skin, and racing heart, or every crack of the fire seemed to echo her pulse, every hiss of smoke a whisper of the chaos that still clung to the night. She pressed her arms to herself, shivering, not entirely from cold, and watched as he knelt before her, golden eyes softened in ways the world outside had never allowed. His hands were careful as he probed the edges of her torn sleeve, lifting it gently, fingertips grazing bruised skin. It was not the clumsy care of someone uncertain. It was precise, tender, deliberate. Each touch was a silent conversation, questions, apologies, and confessions unspoken. Sparks of warmth traveled along her nerves at the brush of his fingers, and she found herself leaning into the sensation despite the war raging inside her. Fear warred with intrigue. She had never allowed anyone to see this. Her weakness, her pain, the tremble in her arm that had nothing to do with the storm outside. "You don't have to hide from me," he whispered, voice low, a gravel-tinged caress. She shook her head, almost in disbelief. I can't," she said, her voice breaking. I've been rejected before. Hurt before. How could I trust someone again?" Her eyes glistened with the weight of memories too long buried. Laughter that had turned to whispers of shame, love that had twisted into cruelty. He didn't flinch, didn't step back. Instead, he reached a hand, hovering just inches from hers as if giving her the choice. "I see you," he said, steady, unwavering. "All of you. Not the broken parts, not the scared parts. I see the strength in the fear, the courage in what they tried to bury. I see you." Her breath caught. Her chest tightened. For a moment, the firelight, or the shadows, the scent of rain-soaked forest that lingered on him, all of it melted into the electricity that crackled between them. Fingers hovered, heart synced in a silent rhythm, and the almost kiss, a space pregnant with promise, fear, and desire, hung in the air. She wanted to reach, to close the distance, yet the old walls of doubt, of caution, rose instinctively. She began, then faltered, swallowed by the weight of hope and the terror of trusting. He leaned closer, scent of earth and smoke filling her senses, voice almost a whisper meant for her alone. "Trust me. Or leave. But whatever you choose, I will not regret seeing you as you truly are." Her eyes flicked to his, searching, pleading, trembling with longing. The fire crackled. The cave seemed to hold its breath. Outside, the forest waited, storm and danger still alive. But in that moment, all that existed was the fragile, impossible intimacy between two hearts scarred by the world, yet daring to hope that maybe, just maybe, they could find each other in the ruins. She inhaled, feeling the courage of her own heartbeat rising to meet his, a fragile, dangerous, beautiful spark in the darkness, promising that the storm to come would not destroy them. It would define them. The grove, once sacred and hushed, erupted into a chaos of shouts, anger, and accusation. She froze at the edge of the circle, her chest tight, breaths shallow, as the council's eyes, cold, accusing, locked onto her. Words stabbed through the night. "She is a threat. Her power will destroy us all. Banish her." The familiar ache of rejection twisted in her chest, sharper than the cold biting at her skin. Every whisper of doubt from her past, or the chaos, and for a heartbeat, relief the chaos, and for a heartbeat, relief shimmered. But then he faltered, hesitation flashing across his golden eyes as though weighing duty against desire. That hesitation shattered something deep inside her. "You choose them over me?" Her mind screamed, but her voice refused to follow. Instead, a low rumble curled in her chest, unfamiliar and wild, an ancient ember that had lain dormant now, stirred by fury and betrayal. Silver sparks flickered across her skin, igniting in waves, dancing over her limbs like liquid fire. The air thickened. Snow swirled unnaturally around her, as if the night itself recognized her rage. She could feel the pulse of power that had always been feared, and always hidden, now roaring, demanding release. The council's voices turned frantic, but no words could reach her. The storm inside eclipsed reason. Her eyes glowed, silver and molten, reflecting every emotion she had ever buried. Heartbreak, fury, longing, and defiance. With a roar that cracked the night, she unleashed it. Flame licking the edges of the grove, snow twisting into fire, shadows scattering before her. Wolves yelped, retreating into the darkness, yet a strange reverence lingered in the air, a recognition of the force she had become. And then, as if the night itself bent to her will, she vanished, leaving only the echo of power in her wake. The grove felt emptier, colder, as the council's fury met the void she left behind. He remained, frozen in disbelief, guilt curling in his chest, unable to follow yet unwilling to look away. And somewhere deep within her, a spark of exhilaration threaded through her grief. She had been rejected, betrayed, and labeled a monster. But for the first time, she was more than fear, more than shame. She was unstoppable. She was given flesh. Her heartbeat echoed in the darkness, each pulse a declaration. I am no one's sacrifice. I am not hiding anymore. And they will learn. I am the power they were too afraid to face. The night was torn open by screams, chaos flooding the grove like a dark river. Wolves scattered, and the ritual that had promised unity instead became a battlefield of fire and blood. He stood there, her alpha, his face pale under the moonlight, fighting against the invaders with every ounce of strength. But he was outnumbered, outmatched, and she could not stay hidden any longer. Every instinct screamed at her, run, I survive, hide. Yet something deeper, primal, surged up through her veins, and she knew, with terrifying clarity, that survival alone would not be enough. She stepped forward from the shadows, and the air trembled. Silver flame danced along her skin, flickering over her limbs, igniting in a brilliance that made even the enemy pause, even the wind hold its breath. The voices of her ancestors, strong, ancient, unyielding, whispered in her ears, filling her with purpose. They told her who she was, what she had always been, a force that could not be tamed, a power that demanded recognition. With each heartbeat, the energy swelled, radiating outward, cracking the earth beneath her feet, shaking roots and stone alike. The enemies faltered, eyes wide with disbelief, unable to comprehend the sheer magnitude of the being now before them. On her pregnancy glowed, not fragile or fearful, but radiant, a beacon of life and strength intertwined. Every step she took was deliberate, every motion a warning. She did not run. She did not apologize. She did not hesitate. She was the storm they had feared, the fire they had tried to control. Her gaze locked onto the true villain, the orchestrator of this chaos, the one who had sought to break her, to strip her of love, of agency, of hope. He sneered, confident in his supposed victory. But she did not flinch. She advanced, silver flames lashing like living whips, her voice rising in a chant that carried the weight of generations, the authority of destiny. The ruins around them shuddered, ancient stones awakening as if acknowledging her claim. Lightning fractured the sky, echoing the raw, untamed power coursing through her. And then she spoke, voice steady, cold, and unyielding. I am not your sacrifice. I am the reckoning you never saw coming. Wolves howled in unison, not in fear, but in allegiance, as the alpha beside her, still stunned, watched a woman transformed into something more than human, more than legend. She was inevitably made of flesh. The battlefield stilled, holding its breath, for nothing could touch her now without paying the cost. She was light and fire, vengeance and protection, destiny and power all at once. The enemy faltered. And in that moment, every fear she had ever carried, the rejection, the shame, the exile, was consumed in the silver blaze of her becoming. She had claimed her power. She had claimed her life. And anyone who dared stand against her would learn, painfully, what it meant to awaken the storm. The grove was quiet now, are eerily so. Smoke curled from scorched earth, and the silver light of her flame still lingered in the night air, painting the trees with a soft, ethereal glow. Wolves circled cautiously, their eyes wary, ears pricked, yet they did not challenge her. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, as if the world itself waited to see what she would do next. And there she stood, her chest heaving, hands still trembling from exertion, hair matted with rain, sweat, and ash. An Omega transformed into a force no one could ignore. He came forward slowly, eyes wide with something between awe and desperation, his alpha authority tempered by raw vulnerability. His voice was low, hoarse, and pleading. "Stay. Please. Don't leave me. Don't leave us." Every word pressed against her heart, pulling at threads she had tried so hard to bury. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust him. She wanted to run into his arms and finally let the fear go. Yet something deeper, stronger than longing, whispered caution. She had been burned before, by rejection, by betrayal, by those who could not see her true self. Her gaze lifted to the horizon, where the first hints of dawn began to fracture the night sky. Shadows stretched long and twisted across the land, reminding her that even victory had its price. Could she surrender herself again? Could she allow herself to be a mate, a partner, a symbol of love after all the pain? Or was her path now one of solitude, of power claimed but freedom preserved? And then her eyes met the audience's, the unseen yet silently present witnesses to her journey. Would you have followed her? Or feared her? She seemed to ask. Could you love someone whose fire burns too brightly for you to control? Every heartbeat, every flicker of silver flame, every scar on her soul reached out like a question in the dark. She inhaled slowly, letting the wind carry her defiance. Is she a hero, or just a girl cursed with too much fire? The world waited for an answer, but it would not come from her tonight. And in a voice barely above a whisper, yet carrying like a command over the stillness, she spoke to those who had journeyed with her. If this story lit something inside you, subscribe to Moonlight Mate's story. Because here, destiny always burns beneath the moon. Her shadow stretched long, silver fire dimming, but never extinguished, leaving the audience suspended, caught between wonder, fear, and the pulse of a story that refuses to end. The forest swallowed her whole. On her boots sank into the soft, wet earth, leaving shallow imprints that trembled with each step. The moonlight filtered through skeletal branches, splintering into shards that danced across her skin, glinting in her silver-infused aura. Every sound was amplified. The distant drip of water from leaves, the rustle of unseen creatures, the faint tremor of the ground beneath her. She moved with cautious grace, alert, heart a drumbeat in the dark, knowing she was no longer the fragile Omega she once was, yet still carrying the weight of every scar, every betrayal, every flicker of fear that had carved her soul. Eyes glinted from the shadows, too many to count, too still to fully trust. She felt them watching, predators, rivals, and hidden enemies, each sensing the tremor of raw, awakened power beneath her skin. A shiver ran along her spine, not from cold, but from the unspoken knowledge that her journey was far from over. Whispers curled through the trees, voices older than the forest itself, barely audible yet insistent. She is not the only one. And the true alpha hasn't risen. Yet. Every word was a weight, a promise, and a warning. The wind shifted, carrying scents she could not name, stirring leaves that whispered secrets she could almost understand. Shadows stretched unnaturally, twisting around gnarled trunks as though the forest itself bent in anticipation, in fear, or perhaps in reverence. She paused, hand brushing against bark, silver fire faintly flickering in her veins, illuminating her pregnancy as a symbol of both vulnerability and unimaginable power. Her breath came slow and measured, yet every inhale pulled tension from the world into her chest, and every heartbeat throbbed with prophecy and peril. And in that frozen moment between moonlight and shadow, she felt it, the pulse of something immense approaching, something that would test her again, force her to rise higher than she had ever imagined. The forest was alive with whispers and motion, and she was at its center, poised between destiny and the unknown. The night was not her enemy. It was a herald, a promise that what she had survived was only the beginning. And as her silhouette faded deeper into the trees, leaving only the trembling earth and the flickering light of her silver fire, the last whispered echo lingered. Prepare for the alpha yet to come. The story was not over. Not by far. And somewhere, just beyond the reach of sight, eyes glimmered, waiting for her next move.